So I think we have Bill Murphy. Where are you, Bill? Let's see. Kia ora. Bill Murphy, who's the CEO of Purpose Capital, and again another impact fund in New Zealand with a slightly different twist. And I think you employed one of our students for a while, which is also nice. Thank you. So maybe we'll just get up the slides and we'll get going.
Well, first off, thank you to Sebastian and the organizers for the invitation. Thank you to all of you as well. You're still here. That's great. We're going to try and make this. This morning was really good. I found it really eye-opening, sobering. It was theoretical. We're going to try and make this afternoon the real deal, cold-face stuff. You know, real investments and stories to enliven you. So, Purpose Capital. Thank you. Yeah, great. So, Purpose Capital. So, as Sebastian mentioned, the funds that you're going to hear from the three funds are a bit different, and that's just because of where we come from. So, I'm the accountant, finance, investment guy. So, not the academic, and so our fund looks like that. It's a Trojan horse. All I care about at this stage is driving social and environmental change and using the tools that we have commercially and financially to do that. So that's my approach to the whole thing. First off, though, I want to congratulate this sector because the sector has come a long way. In 2018, when I realized that New Zealand didn't have any impact funds except, Jamie, I think you were going by then, buddy, weren't you? Yeah. Other than Jamie's, there were no impact funds. I thought, oh, what the heck? I mean, billions of dollars are going into impact in the States and Europe, and we're not, you know. So at any rate, I love a challenge. So established Purpose Capital. But I realized that the way in which I was going to be able to do that was I was going to have to lean very heavily on this room. When you look around the world and you see how impact investing gets started in various places, the philanthropic sector is critically important, especially in the early stage, to start to build the confidence of the commercial sector. So I noticed as I started to have conversations with your sector back in 2018, that you guys were pretty much all still in business as usual mode, which was we take all of our putia, all of our wealth, we wisely give that to, if there's any of those advisors in the room, I always say wisely, we wisely give that to Craig's or JB Ware or Jarden or whoever, very wisely. And then the trickle of money that comes off that, historically used to keep the lights on of your own trust and provide grant funding. Well, it seemed to me that, and when I had conversations with trusts about this, it seemed that we could do much more than that. What if we took a percentage of your balance sheet and we invested that to drive the same kind of outcomes that you were trying to achieve through grant funding? So started having that conversation, and those of you in the industry will know you've come a long way, baby. And I really congratulate the sector for that. You're now at this stage. You're at the signpost stage where you've changed your signpost to allow for impact investing. You've been through all these other stages, and you continue in there. And after this morning, I don't know, maybe you won't, but in terms of ESG and other things. But you're now moving into this phase. And so the key theme of my presentation, given I'm the commercial action guy, right, is going to be, okay, you changed your SIPO, you allow for impact investing. Great, let's get started. Barry's no longer with us this morning, but I just wanted to point out that we're not doing very well in New Zealand. And in terms of the larger market, and we talked a lot about that this morning, there's various reasons for that. Our risk aversion, our lack of sizable investment opportunities in New Zealand. But I think the main point I want to make on this is, and it's a point that's not been discussed. It wasn't discussed this morning. It tends not to be discussed. Why is it that fund managers and others talk about ESG, but then don't perform on it? I mean, are they all bad people? Are they wanting to go out of their way to fool people? No. This is hard stuff. This entails real change. If someone's going to come back, if an investment opportunity is going to come back and is actually going to be walking the talk, that is hard to do because the change that's required in our economy and society around emissions, as was mentioned this morning, is a fundamental change to the entire way in which we live. And if you don't, and so that is very difficult. And how do we manage that within the existing economic system? In other words, how do we continue to get financial return while they're trying to drive real change? That is very difficult, but we don't tend to talk about that. So that's why we don't, that's why people aren't walking the talk. It's very difficult to do it. So with that, start. Impact investing. There's the definition. It's a great definition. Intention, positive, measurable, financial returns. Those are the key aspects of impact investing. And then we can drill down a little bit further. Intentionality. The only investments that we'll make, and I can speak about the collective we, are investments where the heart and soul of the investment is to drive the social and environmental change. That doesn't mean it always has to look like, well, it doesn't mean it always has to be a solar farm. It can look like a conventional business, but it can be driving change within that. An ESG or a green tinge to the investment opportunity? Not for us. Additionality. Now, those of you that may be here for dinner, we could talk the whole dinner about additionality. It's one that really furrows the brow of my investment committee, I can tell you. But additionality essentially means, gosh, our money is so precious. We need to put that impact money where we are confident we're going to be supporting the intention of the founders, the intention of that company. That's a simple way of describing it. Financial return, yes. One of the differences between what I'm doing and what Jamie talked about with Foundation North is I have to go to the market and raise capital for a fund, which means, and at this stage in New Zealand, I can tell you, if I went to the market and I said, we're going to do all this fantastic environmental and social stuff in the market, in New Zealand, in your neighborhoods, in your communities, but we're going to do it at a concessionary financial return rate, I'd be standing here by myself. Unfortunately, that's where we are currently in New Zealand. There's ways to deal with that, which we do deal with, but we are a risk-adjusted market rate of return private equity fund. That's the only ways that I can raise capital currently in the market. And measurement, I'll touch on measurement in a minute, and Jamie did as well. And I stuck one in just for fun because this one doesn't typically isn't typically one of the 4 pillars. But what's the use of impact investing if you don't make sure that the mission, the intention of that impact investment stays, is welded into the company and will go forward? So that's really important. And that gets into governance and lots of other things. So there's our dimensions, impact dimensions. So when we go to assess an investment opportunity, we start to organize our thinking around in the investment opportunity into these kind of categories. What are we doing? Who's going to be affected? How much? What contribution are we going to make? Additionality again. And what's the risks? Not only the risk of a lack of financial return, but also the risk that we might cause negative consequences as a result of our investment. Then we drill down to the next level. The IRIS metrics takes us down into a whole library of assessments and information that's related to that original platform, which deepens our thinking and our consideration about the particular impact metric that we're looking at. We assess all of that and we come up with an agreement with the company. We come up with metrics and a measurement system for the impact with the company. Now, having said all that, these slides look great. It is what I need to be able to show Fisher funds and other Kiwi savers to try and get them to take impact investing seriously and to be able to look at that and say, yeah, we understand that. That looks sort of like the ESG kind of analysis we do. And it is really important stuff. But in impact investing, for instance, Purpose Capital is going to only invest in 8 companies in its first fund. We are intimately involved with those companies. That's where the real impact work happens. We put investor directors into that company. They're responsible for the impact as well as the financial return. And we've got a finger on the pulse, not in a heavy monitoring way, but in a supportive way. As that company develops or that project develops, we adjust the social and environmental metrics to make sure that we're still on track. And we continue to increase the hurdle wherever we possibly can. So Purpose Capital, as I mentioned, $22 million private equity fund established in 2020. We've completed 5 out of 8 investments. We'll be launching our second fund in the second quarter of 2023. The joy of these funds is just as you are getting through your first fund, you've got to start thinking about your second fund and going back out to the market and raising capital. We invest New Zealand wide. Our main funders are in the Bay of Plenty and the Waikato, so we have a particular focus there. Non-concessionary market rate of return. Our key supporters, investors are, and you'll all be familiar with them here in the room, Bay Trust, Whale Energy Trust, and Tech, each invested $5 million each in the fund. So $5 million of the $22 million came from those key stakeholders. I mean, 15 out of 22, you can see the influence that that's had. It was absolutely critical in getting this going. Then we have other trusts and organizations who contributed at a somewhat smaller level, but are still very important to us, of course. And in the marketplace, we have many partners, and I wanted to highlight some of them here. Whakatoa Mussels, Whakatoa Maori Trust Board, I'll be talking about that as one of our investments. Nai Tukarangi, Riri Ellis is represented on our investment committee. Nai Tahu, one of the projects I won't be discussing is Rohe Produce, 8.9 hectare glass house just outside Taupo, utilizing waste geothermal heat, waste CO2, and we're working to get that off the ground in well, Stephen may correct me on this, in what I think might be a first in New Zealand, relationship agreement embedding Indigenous supply, employment, and contractor rights with our partners, Nai Tahu. It's their land. That's where the project's going to go on. Trust Horizon, another one of the trusts in the Bay of Plenty, and Tohara North are both key investment partners with us, as well as New Ground Capital, an ethical home builder and landlord. We'll touch on that. Oh, and I forgot, Te Whanau Apanui. So our good friends further along the Eastern Bay of Plenty and Tikaha, and seaweed is one of the major areas of their focus. So yeah, you'll all recognize this from the movie Boy, I'm sure. Right, Purpose Capital's areas of focus, it had to be broad because I didn't know what the deal flow was going to be like in New Zealand. So affordable housing, environmental degradation, climate change, and we're going to change that to inequity. We're learning all the time particularly about social things. And what where we've gone and where we started from, launched the fund in 2019, first closed 2020, and then we've gone on to make these investments. Whakatoa Mussels, 7.8, 4 million in Beretta, 2.1, 10 million and 1.5. Now you might think to yourself, wait a minute, he said he has a $22 million fund. How the heck is he investing that much money? I'm the investment commercial guy, right? I know what it takes to attract in other capital into investment opportunities. And what it takes is a lead investor, someone who will step in, do the due diligence, do the term negotiation, make the investment commitment themselves, and then turn to the market and say, the table's set. And of course, I don't say this to them. How easy can it be? But the table is set. Join us on this. Help us to scale this impact opportunity. Help us also to make sure we have enough influence in the company to maintain the impact. So that's why Purpose Capital may be investing only $2 million in each of these deals, but the deals themselves are much larger than that. So speaking of which, Whakatoa Mussels. We've built a brand new state-of-the-art factory in Apotiki, New Zealand's second most deprived town. And the most deprived town is Kawerau. We don't like to brag about that, we have plenty, but yeah, we've got real deprivation out east, and Apotiki is certainly a real example of that. We're now employing 190 people in Apotiki, a complete game changer in that community. We had to employ 300 people to get to 190. So the easy option would have been to simply go to Tauranga, go to Whakatane, go to Rotorua, bring in RSE workers. Those would have been the relatively easy options. We've stuck to it. It's been tough. It's been tough. Of the 190, on any given day, 20 or 30 just don't show up. So we're continuing to work on that. The investors that co-invested with us in this project are Bay Trust and Trust Horizon. And as an example of just how important trusts can be in an investment like this, Trust Horizon is helping to fund further work on how we can deepen the environmental impact in this investment opportunity. And Bay Trust is funding research on the employment issues. We're not the only employer in New Zealand who has these challenges by any means. So we're going to share that and widely with others. How are we doing, Sebastian? Yeah. Our next investment was into housing, and you might look at that as if you're from here in Auckland, and you'll sort of say, yawn, you know what? Okay, yeah, townhouses, you know. Believe it or not, in Tauranga, this is a revolutionary development. In the Mount, we've got apartments and you know, things like that, but in Tauranga, we don't. So that's one aspect of it. 15-minute city, trying to get the people in the 5th largest city in New Zealand used to inner city living and cutting down those commute times, 15-minute city, et cetera. However, the most important aspect of this investment is it's build to rent. 45 of these townhouses will be retained by us and our co-investor Bay Trust. At this point, we'll be raising more capital going forward. Will be retained by us as rentals. If you think about the rental market in New Zealand, when I first moved to New Zealand in 1980, very few Kiwis rented. Pretty much everybody owned their own home. Now where are we? And the market hasn't adjusted at all. Rental properties are still owned by me and you. What the heck do we know about renting properties to people in need, particularly? Not a lot. So we decided to take a holiday, sell the house. What happens to the family? Nowadays, it's a real serious issue. So we are big on creating institutionalized, professional, socially aware and conscious landlords in New Zealand. And New Ground Capital is our partner in this. We'll retain those rentals. Families will be able to sign up for 7- and 10-year leases there. They will know that their children can go to that school and they will not have to move. They can build a life in that community. We think that's really important. Lodestone, we're one of the investors, a $10 million syndicate investment into New Zealand's largest solar farm development. 2 solar farms in Northland, 2 in the Eastern Bay of Plenty, and 1 in the Waikato, generating enough electricity to power a city the size of Hamilton. So it's going to be a really positive contribution to decarbonizing New Zealand's energy supply. And investors in this, along with this, are Tauhara North number 2, as well as Trust Horizon. And Homes for Tamariki. This was a bit of a difficult investment consideration for us. This is with Oranga Tamariki, and as soon as you say the word, you know, Oranga Tamariki obviously has had to deal with a lot of negative media, probably a lot of it earned, you know. But somebody needs to step in to help. Oranga Tamariki is desperate to get children out of emergency housing and motels, and particularly desperate to get the 250 most at need children out. They would identify homes in the market. They would go to purchase them. They would then go back into government to get approval. They'd come back out to purchase, house gone. Again and again and again, it happened to them. So we've established a fund where Oranga Tamariki identifies the home. We, with the fund, we go in and purchase the home for them. They long-term lease the home off us. We get these children out of that kind of housing and get them into homes with carers where they desperately need to be. So from an impact perspective, you might say, if you think about it, and this is one of the things that we had to consider at our investment committee, well, what's our contribution? We're buying a house, right? So in terms of our due diligence, we're not providing any of the social services, and let's hope Oranga Tamariki does a wonderful job of that. All we're providing is the home. Therefore, what kind of a difference does that make? So our due diligence really focused in on what kind of a difference does it make to a child to live in a home as opposed to emergency shelters or larger institutional type living. And when we did that research, we satisfied ourselves that that alone made a significant difference. And it can be summarized in a really simple story. As Oranga Tamariki staff told us recently, these children can now, for the first time ever, have a friend come home from school to their house. So, yeah, it does make a real difference, and we're still raising capital for this. So if this rings your bell, please let me know. We'd love to be able to be buying more homes for this program. Right. So I'm getting close to finishing, and I wanted to just call out to all of you. You may not realize just how much power you have in this impact space. You're way more powerful than commercial investors and institutional investors in this space, because you could do ground funding. You could help to identify and establish impact investment opportunities that we can then go on and invest in. You could support due diligence, and we have examples in the investments that we've made where trusts have stepped in and provided us funding to go deeper into due diligence than we would have been able to go otherwise. You can deepen impact, like I mentioned in the Whakatoa Mussels example, where two trusts are doing further research to further deepen the impact. A fund like ours just doesn't have the resources to be able to do that. And in terms of investing, as Jamie mentioned, you can invest at a concessionary level. And let me just make a side point about that. Bit of an argument that I have with trusts. Trusts will look at impact investing and think, I can only do impact investing in my region. I agree with you if the impact return is concessionary, because then you're giving something away, but you're doing it for your community. If it's not concessionary, I then ask you, where are you investing your whole portfolio now? Tokyo, New York, whatever. We can't invest in Hamilton, right? So we won't have that argument now. Impact funds, co-investment, regionally, nationally, and share mission lock. So it's about all about action now. It's about doing it, and it's scary, and it's hard, and you will take risks in this space, and you will make some losses. That's the reality. People like myself, our job is to minimize those, and through a fund, you invest in 8, 10 or more opportunities. Through that diversification, we're after making sure that we generate the return that's required for the risks that we take. But I just want to say to you, there are people in the industry like myself who are more than happy to talk to your trust, to come and speak to your investment committee, and to see how we might be able to forge a way forward to actually get you involved in impact investing. Thank you.